Why America is great. The National Park System. When examining what makes America exceptional, few achievements resonate as powerfully across generations as the National Park System. This uniquely American innovation, which began in the 19th century, has become one of the nation's most successful and enduring contributions to global conservation. The National Park System represents something profound about American values, the belief that extraordinary natural and cultural treasures should belong to everyone, preserved forever for public enjoyment rather than private exploitation. In 2024, the National Park System reached a historic milestone with 331.9 million recreation visits across its 433 units. This represents not just a record-breaking year, but a testament to the enduring appeal and relevance of these protected spaces. The system encompasses 63 national parks alongside monuments, battlefields, seashores, historic sites, and recreation areas, spanning more than 84 million acres across all 50 states and territories. Historical origins. The birth of an idea. The story of America's national park system begins with a revolutionary concept that no other nation had attempted. Before the United States established Yellowstone National Park in 1872, protected lands were typically royal hunting grounds or private estates reserved for the wealthy. The American approach was radically different, setting aside the nation's most spectacular natural wonders for the permanent use and enjoyment of all citizens. The philosophical foundation emerged during the Civil War era when President Abraham Lincoln, amid the nation's darkest hour, signed the Yosemite Grant Act on June 30, 1864. This act transferred Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove to California for preservation and public enjoyment. The Senate later recognized this as the first instance in American history when land was set aside specifically for the enjoyment and protection of future generations, marking the birth of the national park idea. 8 years later, in 1872, President Ulysses S. Grant signed legislation creating Yellowstone National Park in the territories of Montana and Wyoming. This designation made Yellowstone the world's first true national park. The expedition of 1871, led by Ferdinand V. Hayden and sponsored by the U.S. Geological Survey, had documented Yellowstone's wonders through William Henry Jackson's photographs and Thomas Moran's spectacular paintings. When these images reached Eastern audiences, they captivated the American public and galvanized support for permanent protection. However, the early parks faced significant challenges. Each was administered separately by different departments, including the War Department, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of the Interior. Yellowstone, for instance, was supervised by the U.S. Army. Resources for operation and maintenance were minimal, and private interests frequently exploited park resources through timber harvesting, livestock grazing, and hunting. The turning point came in 1914 when Stephen Mather, a wealthy businessman and active outdoorsman, wrote to Secretary of the Interior Franklin Lane complaining about the poor condition of parks he had visited in the Sierra Nevada. Lane's response was direct. If Mather did not like how things were run, he should come to Washington and run them himself. Mather accepted the challenge and, with journalist Robert Sterling Yard, launched an extensive publicity campaign that emphasized the park's magnificence and economic potential as tourist attractions. Their efforts succeeded. On August 25, 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signed the National Park Service Organic Act, creating a unified federal bureau within the Department of the Interior. The act established a clear philosophy. The National Park Service must conserve the scenery, natural and historic objects, and wildlife, while simultaneously providing for public enjoyment in a manner that leaves these resources unimpaired for future generations. This dual mandate of protection and access remains the foundation of park management today. Mather became the first director of the National Park Service, and his vision shaped the system's early development. Under his leadership and that of his successor, Horace Albright, the system expanded significantly. Between 1916 and 1933, more than a dozen new national parks were established, including Grand Canyon in 1919, and in a single month in 1926, Great Smoky Mountains, Shenandoah, and Mammoth Cave. The 1933 reorganization through Executive Orders 6166 and 62228 transformed the National Park Service into a truly national system. All monuments, parks, and battlefields previously overseen by the War Department, along with national monuments held by the Forest Service, were transferred to National Park Service Authority. This brought 13 new areas east of the Mississippi River under park management, expanding the system beyond its western routes. The modern national park system: scale and diversity. Today's national park system encompasses an extraordinary diversity of landscapes, ecosystems, and cultural resources. The 433 units include 63 designated national parks, but the system extends far beyond these flagship locations. It encompasses national monuments that preserve specific natural or cultural features, national historic sites that commemorate important events or figures in American history, national seashores and lakeshores that protect coastal environments, national recreation areas that balance conservation with outdoor activities, and national parkways that preserve scenic roadways. The geographic reach is comprehensive. National parks exist in 32 states and several territories protecting environments as varied as the Everglades wetlands in Florida, the volcanic landscapes of Hawaii, the mountain wilderness of Denali in Alaska, and the desert ecosystems of Death Valley in California. This diversity reflects the National Park Service's evolved understanding that preservation should encompass not just scenic natural wonders, but also sites of historical, cultural, and scientific significance. The variety in park experiences is remarkable. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, straddling the North Carolina-Tennessee border, welcomed 12.19 million visitors in 2024, making it the most visited national park for yet another year. Its accessibility from major population centers and its free admission contribute to its popularity. In contrast, Gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska received only 11,907 visitors that same year, offering a wilderness experience accessible primarily to experienced backcountry travelers. When examining all National Park Service sites, not just the flagship national parks, Golden Gate National Recreation Area in California topped the visitation list with 17.18 million visits in 2024, a nearly 15% increase from 2023. This vast collection of sites, stretching from southern San Mateo County to northern Marin County, includes military installations like the Presidio in San Francisco and supports 19 distinct ecosystems, ranging from seashore to redwood forests. The Blue Ridge Parkway, a scenic roadway connecting Virginia and North Carolina, drew 16.73 million visitors despite closures from Hurricane Helene in 2024. Among the 63 designated national parks, several others joined Great Smoky Mountains in the top 10 for 2024. Zion National Park in Utah attracted 4.94 million visitors, narrowly edging out Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona with 4.91 million. Yellowstone National Park received 4.74 million visitors. Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado hosted 4.15 million, and Yosemite National Park in California welcomed 4.12 million. Acadia National Park in Maine, Olympic National Park in Washington, Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, and Glacier National Park in Montana rounded out the top 10. The data reveals interesting patterns in visitor behavior. While June and July remain peak months, 55% of parks experienced above-average visitation during the traditionally slower periods of February through June and October through December. This spreading of visits throughout the year helps reduce pressure during peak season and demonstrates that Americans are increasingly discovering the parks in all seasons. Additionally, 28 parks set new visitation records in 2024, showing that interest in these protected areas continues to grow. Economic impact. A return on investment. The economic contribution of the national park system extends far beyond the intrinsic value of conservation and public enjoyment. The system generates substantial economic benefits for local communities, states, and the nation as a whole, making it one of the federal government's most cost-effective investments. In 2024, visitor spending in communities near national parks resulted in a $56.3 billion benefit to the nation's economy. This figure represents a significant increase from the previous year's record of $55.6 billion and demonstrates the park's growing economic importance. Visitors spent $29 billion directly in gateway communities, supporting local businesses and creating employment opportunities. The economic multiplier effects are substantial. The initial $29 billion in direct spending generated $18.8 billion in labor income and supported 340,000 jobs nationwide. These positions span numerous sectors, with the lodging industry receiving the highest direct contributions at $11.1 billion in economic output. Restaurants garnered the next greatest benefit with $5.7 billion in economic output. These jobs and the income they generate create further economic activity as employees spend their wages in local economies, producing secondary benefits that ripple through regional economic systems. The return on investment is exceptional. According to the National Parks Conservation Association, each federal dollar invested in the National Park Service generates $10 in economic activity. The entire National Park Service budget represents approximately 1/15 of 1% of the federal budget, a remarkably small allocation, considering the economic returns and public benefits provided. Individual states see substantial benefits from park presence. North Carolina, for example, recorded $2.3 billion in economic output from its 9 National Park Service sites in 2024, making it second only to California's $3.7 billion. The state's 5 coastal park sites alone attracted 4.7 million visitors who spent $732.2 million in surrounding communities. Cape Hatteras National Seashore, the nation's first national seashore, saw 2.8 million visitors spend an estimated $650 million in 2024. These economic benefits extend to some of the nation's most remote areas. Parks in Alaska, while receiving relatively few visitors compared to more accessible locations, provide crucial economic support to communities with limited alternative economic opportunities. The visitor spending creates jobs in guiding, hospitality, transportation, and retail sectors that might not otherwise exist in these isolated regions. The economic impact data also reveals changing patterns in visitor spending. The nearly 10% increase in total visitor spending estimates from 2023 to 2024 reflects both the 2% increase in visitation and changing visitor behaviors. Overnight stays at concession-operated lodging increased by 11.7%, suggesting visitors are spending more time in and around parks rather than making brief day trips. This extended engagement benefits local economies more substantially and provides visitors with deeper, more meaningful park experiences. Gateway communities particularly benefit from park proximity. Towns near national parks develop robust tourism economies with hotels, restaurants, outfitters, guide services, and retail establishments serving park visitors. These businesses often operate year-round, supported by shoulder season visitors and local residents, creating stable employment rather than purely seasonal jobs. The parks thus serve as economic anchors for rural communities that might otherwise struggle to maintain viable economies. Biodiversity conservation, protecting America's natural heritage. Beyond economic benefits and public recreation, the national park system serves as America's primary mechanism for large-scale biodiversity conservation. The parks protect crucial habitats, preserve genetic diversity, facilitate species recovery, and maintain ecological processes that sustain healthy ecosystems. The National Park Service currently works to conserve approximately 600 threatened and endangered species across more than 200 park sites. This conservation work occurs against the backdrop of what scientists recognize as a global biodiversity crisis, with species disappearing at rates unprecedented in modern times. The parks provide refuges where species can survive, reproduce, and potentially recover from population declines. The Endangered Species Act, passed by Congress in 1973, has proven remarkably effective, credited with saving 99% of listed species from extinction. Over 100 species of plants and animals have been delisted or declassified due to improved conservation status. National parks play a crucial role in this success by providing protected habitats where recovery efforts can proceed without the immediate pressures of development, resource extraction, or habitat conversion. Park-based conservation efforts encompass diverse species and ecosystems. In Yosemite National Park, restoration and revegetation projects support the federally threatened California red-legged frog and the federally endangered Sierra Nevada yellow-legged frog. Joshua Tree National Park's expanded lands protect habitat for the federally threatened desert tortoise from nearby development and recreational pressure. Timucuan Ecological and Historic Preserve conducts shoreline restoration to benefit the scalloped hammerhead shark, listed as federally threatened in parts of its range. Some parks harbor species that exist nowhere else. The Century milk vetch, an endangered plant, lives exclusively in Grand Canyon National Park. Guadalupe fescue, a foot-tall grass species, resides only in Big Bend National Park. These endemic species represent unique evolutionary adaptations to specific environments, and their loss would constitute irreversible extinctions. The parks also protect charismatic megafauna that capture public imagination and serve as flagship species for conservation. Glacier National Park and Yellowstone National Park provide habitat for threatened grizzly bears. Yellowstone's wolf reintroduction, one of conservation's great success stories, has restored ecological balance to the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The park's famous bison herds represent one of the few remaining populations of this species that once numbered in the millions. Everglades National Park shelters the endangered Florida Panther, while the range for the endangered California condor, North America's largest bird, extends to Grand Canyon and Pinnacles National Parks. Less visible but equally important species also receive protection. Buffalo National River supports mapping efforts for the federally endangered snuffbox mussel and the federally threatened rabbit's foot mussel. North America contains the world's highest diversity of freshwater mussels, with over 70% of approximately 300 species considered endangered, threatened, or of special concern. These organisms play crucial roles in aquatic ecosystem health, filtering water and serving as indicators of environmental quality. The park's conservation value extends beyond individual species to entire ecosystems. They protect representative examples of major American ecosystems: prairie, tundra, ocean, mountains, forest, desert, rivers, islands, reefs, mangroves, and coastal wetlands. This diversity of habitats supports the full range of ecological processes, including predation, competition, pollination, seed dispersal, nutrient cycling, and natural disturbance regimes. Large protected areas like national parks provide the landscape-scale connectivity necessary for wide-ranging species and ecological processes. They accommodate seasonal migrations, genetic exchange between populations, and the natural movements of predators and prey. They serve as climate refugia, where species can persist as conditions change elsewhere, and as source populations that can recolonize degraded habitats as restoration occurs. Research conducted in national parks advances scientific understanding of biodiversity and ecosystem function. Parks serve as living laboratories where scientists can study relatively intact ecosystems and develop insights applicable to conservation elsewhere. Long-term monitoring programs track population trends, document ecosystem changes, and provide early warning of emerging threats. This knowledge base informs management decisions within parks and conservation strategies beyond park boundaries. The parks also fulfill a critical educational function, connecting millions of Americans with biodiversity through direct experience. When visitors encounter elk in Rocky Mountain National Park, sea turtles off the coast of dry Tortugas National Park, or wildflower meadows in Olympic National Park, they develop personal connections to wildlife and natural systems. These experiences foster conservation ethics and create constituencies supporting broader environmental protection, cultural and historical preservation. While natural wonders receive much attention, the national park system's role in preserving American cultural and historical heritage proves equally significant. The system protects sites that tell the full story of American history, from prehistoric times through the present, encompassing achievements and struggles, triumphs and tragedies. The system includes national historic sites commemorating pivotal events and influential figures. Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park in Atlanta preserves the birth home and church of the civil rights leader. Independence. National Historical Park in Philadelphia protects Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were debated and adopted. Gettysburg. National Military Park preserves the site of the Civil War's most famous battle, and President Lincoln his Gettysburg Address. The parks recognize the full diversity of American experience. Sites like Manzanar National Historic Site preserve the memory of Japanese-American incarceration during World War II. Trail of Tears. National Historic Trail commemorates the forced removal of Cherokee and other Native American nations from their ancestral lands. Women's Rights National Historical Park in Seneca Falls marks the birthplace of the women's suffrage movement. These sites ensure that difficult chapters of American history remain visible and available for reflection and learning. Indigenous cultural heritage receives increasing recognition within the park system. Many parks contain significant archaeological sites, including Mesa Verde, National Park's cliff dwellings, Chaco Culture, National Historical Park's great houses, and Poverty Point, National Monuments earthworks. The National Park Service works with tribal nations to ensure these sites are interpreted respectfully and that traditional cultural practices can continue where appropriate. Recent additions demonstrate the system's evolution to reflect broader historical narratives. 4 new sites began reporting statistics in 2024. Amashi National Historic Site, commemorating a World War II Japanese-American incarceration camp, Emmett Till, and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument, honoring the victims of racial violence and the civil rights movement. Ice Age National Scenic Trail in Wisconsin, and St. Genevieve National Historical Park in Missouri, preserving French colonial architecture and history. Historic preservation extends to architectural heritage. The system protects examples of various architectural styles and periods, from colonial structures at Colonial National Historical Park to the Art Deco buildings of Miami Beach, preserved within the park system. These structures serve as tangible links to past eras, helping Americans understand how previous generations lived and worked. The parks also preserve cultural landscapes where human activity shaped the land over generations. These include agricultural landscapes, industrial sites, designed landscapes like gardens and parks, and vernacular landscapes that evolved through use. Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Ohio, for instance, protects both natural areas and the cultural landscape of the historic Ohio and Erie Canal. Scientific research and education. National parks serve as invaluable platforms for scientific research and public education, generating knowledge that extends well beyond park boundaries and fostering environmental literacy among millions of Americans. The relatively undisturbed nature of park ecosystems makes them ideal for long-term scientific studies. Researchers can observe ecological processes, study species interactions, monitor population dynamics, and document environmental changes with minimal confounding variables from development or resource extraction. This research provides baseline data for understanding natural systems and detecting anthropogenic impacts. Climate change research benefits particularly from park-based studies. Scientists monitor glacial retreat in Glacier National Park, document shifts in species ranges across multiple parks, and track phenological changes like earlier spring flowering or altered migration timing. This research reveals climate impacts on diverse ecosystems and helps predict future changes. The parks themselves serve as climate refugia, where species may persist even as conditions become unsuitable elsewhere. Biodiversity inventories conducted in parks have discovered thousands of species new to science. Between 1999 and 2014, park biodiversity discovery activities identified numerous species previously unknown to park species lists, expanding scientific understanding of American biodiversity. These discoveries continue as technologies improve and areas receive more intensive study. Even well-studied parks yield new findings as researchers apply novel methods or investigate understudied taxa. The parks support research across numerous disciplines beyond biology and ecology. Geologists study volcanic processes at Yellowstone, glacial dynamics in Alaska's parks, and karst formations at Mammoth Cave. Archaeologists excavate and analyze sites revealing human prehistory and history. Social scientists study visitor behavior, environmental attitudes, and the human dimensions of natural resource management. This multidisciplinary research generates insights applicable far beyond individual parks. Education programs reach diverse audiences. Park interpretive staff conduct ranger-led programs explaining natural and cultural resources to visitors. These programs transform casual visits into meaningful learning experiences, helping visitors understand what they observe and why it matters. Junior Ranger programs engage young visitors, fostering environmental stewardship in future generations. Every year, millions of children participate in these programs, earning Junior Ranger badges while learning about park resources and conservation. Schools use parks as outdoor classrooms, teachers bring students to parks for hands-on learning experiences that complement classroom instruction. Park partnerships with school districts support curriculum development, teacher training, and student field trips. These programs serve students who might have limited exposure to natural environments, building appreciation for outdoor spaces and environmental sciences. The parks also advance citizen science, engaging volunteers in data collection and monitoring. Programs like BioBlitzes invite public participants to help inventory species in designated areas, simultaneously generating scientific data and fostering public engagement with biodiversity. Volunteers monitor wildlife populations, collect water quality data, and assist with vegetation surveys. This participation democratizes science, showing that meaningful research requires not just credentialed experts, but engaged citizens, challenges, and future directions. Despite their success, national parks face significant challenges that threaten their ability to fulfill their mission of preservation for future generations. Understanding these challenges is essential for ensuring the system's continued vitality. Visitation pressure, while demonstrating public appreciation, creates management challenges. Popular parks experience crowding that degrades visitor experiences and damages resources. Trails erode from overuse, vegetation suffers from trampling, wildlife experiences disturbance, and infrastructure becomes overwhelmed. Some parks have implemented reservation systems for entry or for accessing particular features, attempting to balance access with protection. Managing this tension between use and preservation will become increasingly important as visitation continues growing. Climate change poses existential threats to some park resources. Glacier National Park has lost most of its namesake glaciers. Joshua Tree National Park faces possible loss of Joshua trees as climate shifts beyond their tolerance ranges. Coastal parks contend with sea level rise threatening infrastructure and resources. Species protected in parks may find conditions becoming unsuitable for their survival, raising difficult questions about assisted migration and other interventions. Parks can no longer be managed as static museums, but must incorporate dynamic responses to environmental change. Funding constraints limit the Park Service's capacity to address mounting challenges. The 2024 visitor numbers and economic impacts highlight the park's value, yet funding has not kept pace with needs. A multi-billion-dollar maintenance backlog affects park infrastructure. Staffing limitations reduce interpretive programs, maintenance activities, and research capacity. Recent staffing reductions have heightened concerns about the park's ability to serve visitors safely and protect resources effectively. External threats from beyond park boundaries affect resources within them. Air pollution impacts visibility and vegetation health. Water pollution from upstream sources degrades aquatic ecosystems. Habitat fragmentation isolates park populations from others of their species. Climate change, driven by global emissions, alters park conditions regardless of management within boundaries. Addressing these threats requires coordination with surrounding landowners, state and local governments, and international partners. Invasive species threaten park ecosystems. Non-native plants outcompete native vegetation, altering habitats and fire regimes. Invasive animals prey on or compete with native species. Diseases like white nose syndrome in bats and chronic wasting disease in deer spread through park wildlife populations. Controlling invasive species requires sustained, resource-intensive efforts with no permanent solutions in sight. The changing demographics of the United States present both challenges and opportunities. As the nation becomes more diverse, ensuring that parks remain relevant and welcoming to all Americans requires intentional effort. Historical barriers to access, whether economic, cultural, or geographic, must be addressed. The Park Service has worked to diversify its workforce, expand interpretation to reflect multiple perspectives, and develop partnerships with communities that have felt excluded from park narratives. Looking forward, the national park system must adapt while maintaining its core mission. Strategies might include expanded protection for threatened ecosystems and cultural sites, enhanced connectivity between protected areas to facilitate species movement, stronger partnerships with tribes, states, and private landowners, increased emphasis on climate adaptation and resilience, greater investment in maintaining existing infrastructure, and continued efforts to make parks accessible and relevant to all Americans. Conclusion: an enduring legacy. The National Park System stands as one of America's finest achievements, embodying the democratic ideal that extraordinary natural and cultural treasures belong to all citizens. The system's success demonstrates that conservation and public access can coexist when managed thoughtfully. It proves that short-term economic pressures need not dictate the fate of irreplaceable resources. The 2024 visitation record of 331.9 million recreation visits demonstrates the American public is enduring appreciation for their national parks. These visits generated $56.3 billion in economic benefits, while enabling millions of Americans to experience natural wonders, encounter wildlife, explore historical sites, and find recreation in protected landscapes. The parks create jobs, support communities, protect biodiversity, preserve history, advance science, and foster environmental stewardship. The National Park System's influence extends globally. Following America's lead, nations worldwide have established their own national park systems, protecting natural and cultural heritage on every continent. The concept that began with Yellowstone in 1872 has become a universal tool for conservation and public benefit. American leadership in this arena has helped protect biodiversity and cultural heritage worldwide. As the United States approaches its 250th anniversary in 2026, the National Park System exemplifies American values at their best: democratic access, long-term thinking, recognition of shared heritage, and commitment to leaving something better for those who follow. The system represents a contract between generations, a promise that today's Americans will protect what they have inherited so that future generations can experience the same wonders. The parks remind us that not everything must be measured in immediate economic returns or short-term utility. Some places deserve protection simply because they are extraordinary, because they harbor irreplaceable natural or cultural resources, because they inspire awe and wonder, and because they connect us to something larger than ourselves. The National Park System embodies this understanding, making it a profound expression of what makes America great. In an era of political division and competing priorities, the national parks remain remarkably unifying. Americans across the political spectrum support the parks and value what they protect. This consensus reflects shared recognition that some things transcend partisan differences and deserve preservation regardless of changing political winds. The challenge for current and future generations is to maintain this commitment, ensuring the parks receive the resources, protection, and respect necessary to fulfill their mission. This means adequate funding for maintenance and operations, strong protection against threats both within and beyond park boundaries, thoughtful management that balances use with preservation, and continued efforts to make parks accessible and relevant to all Americans. The National Park System demonstrates that America can think beyond immediate gratification to consider what will matter in a century or a millennium. It shows that a nation founded on individual liberty can also embrace collective stewardship. It proves that economic prosperity and environmental conservation can reinforce rather than oppose each other. These lessons remain as relevant today as when Yellowstone was established more than 150 years ago. As visitors continue flocking to parks in record numbers, as communities benefit from tourism economies, as species find refuge from extinction, and as children discover the natural world through park experiences, the National Park System fulfills the vision of those who fought for its creation. It stands as evidence that America, at its best, can preserve its natural and cultural heritage for the benefit of all people, forever. This commitment to preservation and public access, this recognition that some treasures belong to everyone and should be protected for future generations, makes the National Park System one of the greatest achievements in American history and a powerful demonstration of why America is great.